Hello. 6 points in 3 or 4 games at home. Tough road or tough homestand, and they battled through it. I think the red flags are still there. Like there's still some issues. Oh, I forgot to do the light. Oh, now I look like an idiot because of the light. Oh, jeez. Oh well, you're just gonna have to put up with it. I did the wrong light. Now you're just going to have to put up with it. But I had a hell of a pun right here. Look at this. Oh, yeah. Wild one at home. And then the other one, it says something about let's talk about a wild win against the Wild. I'm on fire today. Let's just be honest. Dominant tweeting. You know, just great. Just great stuff. You can't get away from that. But I will say this. I like the path that the Golden Knights are headed on. I think they're starting to look like themselves again. I think they're starting to play the type of game where they control the puck the majority of the game. They're starting to do the types of things where when they are getting transition chances, they're finishing them. They're creating some turnovers. They're getting the type of play out of different players that they need. They're drawing more penalties, which is another one that having the puck more certainly helps in that regard. Power play still looks like a mess at times, but then today you had two pretty beautiful ones. The one tic-tac-toe play, really impressive. Like there's a lot of good things that they're heading in the right direction, but at the same time, while you're doing this, you're not getting the best goaltending out of Robin Lehner. I don't think he's been quite up to the standard that he can be, and I think he will be better moving forward. And then B, there's still massive breakdowns and a number of different options that I've seen and situations that I've seen where the execution is poor, not options, just situations where the execution has not been to the level of what the Golden Knights need and what the Golden Knights can be. And because of that, you're seeing issues where the puck's getting in behind, they have to take a penalty, and then the trailer scores a goal. Or you lose a draw off the beginning of the period. You're not set up in the neutral zone the way that you should be. Everybody's not on the same page, and you give up a chance right in behind. Shot goes down. You go behind. Like these are still the pieces that concern me. And in this particular game, your goal against Minnesota is to clear the front of the net. Your goal against Minnesota is not to give up a lot in front of your own goal. And when you look at the shot chart and you look at the way that game went, they gave up a lot in front of their own goal. Even if you go to the goofy Leonard gaff where the puck goes behind his net, and it's just a bad moment and it's a bad situation. It's unfortunate. But even that moment, a team that is committed and focused to winning in front of their goal is able to rescue that play and not be second on that puck, which they were. And against this team, they have been far too often. They played this team like 30 fucking times in the past, 2 years or whatever it's been. It's been way too many. Luckily, we're basically done with that for a little while here, but I think that that's the one piece that I look at some of the game planning stuff, and you're saying, well, you're starting to get back to the style of game you want to play. But even when they've been able to get back to a little bit of this shot suppression style, out shooting the team 2-1 basically every single night, even when we've been in that, you lose the game to Philly, you almost blow the game to Calgary. You lose, what was the other game? The other game was wild. What was the other one? I can't remember. Come on. I'm losing it here. Philly, Calgary. Oh, the Dallas game. Yeah, that's right. The Dallas game, which is another one that's close. You give up a bunch of goals. You go behind in that game 3-1. Like they fight back. They come back in that game. But I think that for this team to really take the step that we would like to see them take, I think prior to Eichel coming back, you want to really make sure that you're in a position where you're sound defensively. And even if you're not getting the elite goaltending that you hopefully can be getting when the time comes, now's not the time you need the goal line or the goaltending. It doesn't really make a huge difference. Like, yeah, you'll take these points. They're certainly happy to have these points. And if certain things go the other way, maybe you're looking up at the cut line. But I think when you're starting to watch this team play, I think the more you watch the different styles of team coming in here, Calgary, Dallas, Minnesota, Philly, they all come in here, and Vegas basically controls play on a majority of these teams and a majority of the game against these teams. You have to start to feel like, okay, I'm not all that worried about where we're headed moving forward. It's more about how do we put ourselves in a position to be where we need to be when we get the next big piece into the lineup, when there's going to be change coming up in the future. And in that moment, when you're basically having to change your team a little bit and be in a position where now we're headed towards the postseason. I have no concerns at all that this team's going to make the postseason. I don't think anyone listening to this should have any concerns. It should basically be out of our minds. So more so what you're looking at, and while, yeah, you still need to rack up points, and I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, I don't care about the 6 points that they got. I do. And I do think it's very important. I do think that the process, while heading in the right direction, while way better than where it was 3 weeks ago when they had all the guys out of the lineup, this isn't horribly surprising. They get the players back in the lineup and it's starting to look a little bit more like Vegas hockey. The problem is that one of the issues that kind of went away from the Golden Knights game after they got Pete DeBoer was these defensive breakdowns were usually not happening as consistently as they've been happening. You know, you have this one today, and I kind of want to look at it even further. I don't really fully understand what happened. Like, to me, it looked like Hutton skated to the wrong place, but he looked fairly confident skating to where he went. And then you don't have the guy in behind him. They make one simple pass and they're in and they score the goal. Like, that just can't happen. And it's that type of thing that's been happening more and more often. The other one, and it's on the glove save behind his head into the goal disaster thing. There's 2 opportunities for Mark Stone to get that puck out of the zone. And I thought in both cases, he took a poor option to get that puck out of the zone. And you end up with a shot coming from the point that unfortunately takes a goofy hop and goes into your goal. That can be avoided. And that was avoided after that goal happened. Every time that they were in the defensive zone from there on out, it was going to take an elite play to beat them. And Minnesota almost got it. Now, Minnesota's a good team. You can't sit there and say, well, we're just going to defend for 5 minutes and not give up anything of worthiness. Like, that's not going to happen. So the one hits the pipe, and I know one hit the pipe against Calgary, and you look at that and say, okay, well, fortunately, both of those go out. Luckily, they don't go in. The Golden Knights are pretty damn good at 6-on-5. Today, not as good. I would have liked to see a little bit more at 6-on-5, especially because once they gave up that goal, the goofy one, the 4th one, they get the power play, they score the power play goal. From that moment forward, you're playing against a team that played last night and a late game last night, comes in here playing a back-to-back on the road with travel, tougher game being the second game. Their goalie's not exactly having the best game of his life. I didn't think Talbot was terrible, but not having the best game of his life. They're feeling like this game could potentially be slipping away. When that goal happens, that you get that goal, that you get that power play goal, you're now up 5-4. That's the moment where I'm like, all right, put the shot suppression machine on, clog up the neutral zone, play boring hockey to get your way out. They did it for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then straight out of that TV timeout towards the end, it kind of started to disintegrate a little bit. And that's where I look at the 6-on-5 and I say, well, as much as I'm happy that they got this one, the puck bounces off the post and in today. We'll take that. Obviously, take your 2 points against a high-end team. I do think that the process has to start getting better as we move forward, as you get to the point where you're going to be in a situation where you are going to be getting an important player into your lineup, making a couple of different changes, and there's going to be kind of a reset at that point. You want to be in a good position once you get there. As far as this question of where is Eichel going to fit when he comes back, to me, no matter what's going on with Stevenson, no matter what's going on with the Misfits, no matter what's going on underneath that, it doesn't make any difference. I just do not think there's any position where you can put Eichel, Pacioretty, and Stone on a permanent line together. I don't mind them in certain situations. I'm pumped to be able to see them in opportunities on the power play. I just don't think that can be your everyday line. And the reason for that is because each of them in many ways could be a point per game player. You should be getting massive numbers of goals from them. I need those spread out over the lineup and getting other guys involved. Like, if you put him there and all of a sudden Eichel becomes a point per game player, well, now that's just Stevenson's points that you're taking away and putting somewhere else. I trust Eichel a little bit more than Stevenson to generate those points elsewhere in the lineup. It doesn't necessarily mean I want him on the third line. I don't think it's the worst idea. If he were coming back tomorrow I'm probably leaning that way straight out of the gate. Just for now, doesn't mean he's not going to play a lot. I'm going to get him plenty of penalty or power play time. I'm going to try and steal some offensive zone shifts in different situations. We'll get him out there for different draws where we can have opportunities, but I just don't think you want to load this thing up, especially going into a postseason, and a postseason where Stone has been cold in the past. Pacioretty's gone cold in the past. Stevenson's gone cold in the past. The misfit line as a whole has been fairly consistent, but at times their offense can go cold. Maybe having Eichel in there in a different spot can generate some of that offense for those guys, and then you're still getting those moments where Stevenson, Stone, and Pacioretty have dominated at different times in the postseason. And then, of course, there has to be, the elephant in the room, which is something has to go out for them to do it. So we'll see what happens. I don't think that they're going to make a decision anytime soon. I think they're just going to kick the can all the way down the road, basically all the way into March. I don't think they're going to make a decision anytime soon. So I don't think we have to be all that on top of that. So I'd rather focus more on what we saw today. There were a couple of different good things I want to talk about that we saw. Two guys in particular, fantastic games, maybe the best games. I think maybe the best games of both of their Golden Knights careers. And I'll tell you about both of them after I tell you that this Periscope is brought to you by Conlon Associates CPAs. Look at that transition. Conlon Associates CPAs are fantastic with all of your tax needs. If you have cryptocurrency tax needs, gambling tax needs, you're winning the poker tournaments, you're in the World Series of Poker, you got one of those bracelets, and you don't know what to do with your taxes, go to conlercpa.com. If you have a small business and you have small business questions like I seem to have all the time, especially why I keep getting letters in the mail asking me about sales tax. Nope, that's a joke. That's an Arizona Coyotes joke. I don't get those letters because I pay my taxes on time. Actually, I don't have sales tax, but still, I pay my taxes online or on time and online. And if I didn't, I would have Conlon Associates help me out. Go to conlercpa.com and tell them that SinBin sent you. We appreciate it. It is not these two, even though these two both played fairly well. It is these two, Whitecloud and Stevenson. Both were tremendous today. I'll start with Whitecloud because I think that there's something to be said about his offensive instincts, and then there's also something to be said about how the game is played when he's utilizing those offensive instincts. And at times we've seen, and this isn't a lot for Zach Whitecloud, and I think a lot of it is his partner at different times, but a lot of times when that focus is on generating the offense, coming up and making a play in the rush, oftentimes they lead to the breakdowns that I don't like, that I don't want to see, that I think could potentially be the reason the Golden Knights aren't going for 16 wins in the postseason this year. Today, that was not the case with Zach Whitecloud. He was unbelievably responsible defensively, absolutely brilliantly in his own end. A number of different times I found myself saying, wow, what a fantastic play that was by who was that? And then I looked down and it's Whitecloud. Often he was making that first exit pass that was completely breaking down the Minnesota forecheck and allowing the Golden Knights an opportunity to get out of the zone quickly and put themselves in a really good position to start a rush the other way. Didn't always lead to goals. That's not what I'm worried about. The difference was today when he had his opportunities, both of which flying through the slot, he was able to bury both of them. That is the part of Zach Whitecloud's game you want. You want him to have that offensive instinct, but the more important piece of his game is going to be how he defends. How he plays in the penalty kill, how he plays in his own end, how he's breaking down forechecks of the opposing team. He was very, very, very good at that. I actually thought he was better defensively than he was offensively today, and he had 2 goals and nearly had a hat trick. Hilarious in the post-game presser. Justin Emerson asked him if he was thinking about the Hattie on the breakaway. He said he's not. Justin responds, really? Like, hilarious. I thought that was great. Mark Stone jumps in, says, I was thinking about it. And he had this look of what are you talking about that you weren't thinking about it? I think we all were thinking about it. I'm sure Zach Whitecloud had it on his mind. Unfortunately, it doesn't go in that situation. That would have been pretty cool that Coughlin and Whitecloud were the last 2 defensemen Hatties. That would have been pretty neat. But it is what it is. I'm not all that worried about that. That was a hell of a game that he put in. That's the type of game that if that becomes the consistent game that we get out of Zach Whitecloud, of course the contract that he just recently signed is amazing. But I don't think that's the game that you can expect out of Zach Whitecloud all the time. Like, that was an excellent game. His mother's in the building today. He clearly had one of his best games of his Golden Knights career. That's awesome. Hopefully he can build on it. I need to see a lot more of that before I start going on saying that this is a steal of a contract like was brought up by DeBoer today. If he plays like that all day, of course, that would have been great. Yeah, that's a good call. That other hat trick was against the Wild, wasn't it? What else do we have? Let's see. Chandler Stevenson. So Chandler let us in on some information about why he missed the last game. Apparently his grandmother passed away. He flew to Western Canada. I don't know where in Western Canada. That's a pretty vague term, but that's where he flew to. So he flies all the way up there, comes all the way back in, comes into this game, and was terrific. Off the puck, on the puck. Really good. I think the part of the game that I'm starting to really be impressed with from Chandler Stevenson, I knew the speed was there. We've seen the finishing when he gets in tight, a lot of these opportunities and these breakaways. I think the part that's becoming more and more impressive to me is when that line's on the ice, it's nearly impossible to get the puck from any of the three of them. I've always known that with Pacioretty. I've always known that with Stone. And now with Stevenson being a lot stronger on his stick, and I think it's more his confidence in himself in making these decisions, where in the past, I think he was kind of on this line saying, I just need to get the puck to these two and they'll take care of business. Where now I think he's actually controlling the play a little bit more and generating offense for other players because he's so hard to get the puck off of, because he can do it. And I don't know if was always in his game or that's something we're starting to see now. I'm not really sure. But what we are seeing is when he's doing that, he's going to get a bunch more assists, because what's going to happen is it draws the defense towards him. Anytime somebody holds the puck, it draws people towards them. Just the way hockey players are, is they're drawn to the puck. It opens things up. It stretches the defense out, and it gives time and space for other people when you're able to hold the puck. It's why David Perron is so goddamn dangerous in the offensive zone, was because when he holds the puck, you have to respect it, and he becomes super dangerous for everybody else. That's what we're seeing out of Chandler Stevenson recently, and it's something that I think we have not seen prior to this season, and that, to me, is the reason why he's basically, or I think he is now, a point-per-game player, where previously he was not. I do think that, like, playing up to the standard that he played on today. Obviously, when you play a regular season game and there's a little bit more in you, you tend to play a little bit better. That's exciting. I like seeing guys who are kind of going through something and are able to go out and have that moment. I think that's going to be very helpful for him, and to not have to dwell and not be thinking about that. That's good. And I'm sure that, like, team wise, that's nice to see him have a massive game. And then, it leads into Pacioretty. I'm going to write about this tomorrow. He mentioned in the podcast with Alan Walsh, almost said Alan Snell there. I don't think he was on a podcast with Alan Snell. He was on a podcast with Alan Walsh, his agent. He mentioned that he had put in some time in working on making his skating better. I want to go back through some of the goals and look at how often are they skating related. And then also we mentioned a couple of days ago how much more time he's been spending with Misha Donskov, getting in some of the skills work. And I do think you see him out on the ice a lot, but I think he's actually got a little bit more of a central focus of exactly what he wants to be working on now. And 10 goals in 10 games and, playing the way that he's playing, it certainly leads you to believe that something's going in the right direction. And these are the types of things that when you went into this season, we were trying to find different pieces of why does this team have the ability to take that next step. Chandler Stevenson taking the next step. Max Pacioretty becoming what looks like a 45-goal scorer as opposed to a 30-goal scorer. I think that there's something to be said about, like, Zach Whitecloud and Nick Hague having a little bit more offense to their game. Pietrangelo being more comfortable in the system. Like, all of these things add up to this team has a damn good shot to do this. Now, when they infuse Eichel into the roster and rip 2 or 3 guys off the roster, maybe it looks different. I don't know. I stand by. I'm not entirely sure why they felt the need to do that. But now that they have done it, now get to a point where you're as good as you can possibly be, make the right decision at the deadline, and then hopefully Jack Eichel fits right in. We will find out down the road what it's going to look like. I do think that when you look at this team and you say, all right, look how they were able to survive, and now look at where they are now and where they're probably headed, I think you're in a really good position there. Who is the Golden Knights' biggest rival right now? Probably Colorado would be my argument at the moment. I think that was a hell of a series. I think Colorado probably hates them more than anybody else. I think that was the one series probably since Winnipeg that they really felt like they were the underdogs in, and you know, you're going to hate a team when that happens. I don't think it's this Minnesota team. I just think there's been too many wins for the Golden Knights for it to be the Minnesota team. I do think there is some bad blood there, but that's more so because Hartman's a douche. Like, that's just the way the guy plays. He's always played that way. I give the dude credit. Like, he's turned himself into one hell of a hockey player, which I didn't see coming. Like, I just thought he was going to be the shit disturber. He's turning himself into a hell of a hockey player, but still doing the douchey stuff. And that's why I think you see some of these games with Minnesota escalate more so than other. I don't think the bad blood is at the same level. I'm interested to see what it looks like when Colorado comes in here. Obviously, they haven't played an important game against San Jose in a long time. I think we all probably hate San Jose the most, but I think Colorado's the one that everybody still kind of looks at. I think this team still kind of measures themselves against. There's no concern about like, oh, Minnesota's in the top of the standings or Anaheim's in the top of the Pacific right now. I think everybody pretty much knows it's Vegas and Colorado. And obviously once Eichel comes in, how does that change things and where does Colorado look different? And that's, you know, I think we're headed for that again. But both teams got to get through a number of series. We'll have to wait and see. Moving forward, you've got 4 games at Boston, New York, and New Jersey. The Golden Knights have not played that well on the road. When you look at the road and home splits, they're much better at home, even though the goals against isn't all that good. You know, controlling the puck wasn't all that good until this last little run when they've gotten healthy. I think some of the bounces haven't gone their way. Some of the fortunate things, like the late one off the post today, doesn't go their way on the road. I'd like to see that style of play for 4 games here, or at least 3 of them. Take it to a couple of these teams and find a way to kind of tilt the ice against these teams, shot suppress a couple of these teams, and play the type of game that we're used to the Golden Knights playing. And this is against opponents that haven't seen it in a long time. They haven't played any of these teams in quite some time. I mean, they played the Islanders in a home game, but being on their ice, it's a little bit different. Obviously, I think the matchups are a little bit different. I think it puts a little bit more stress on that 3rd and 4th line. If Hutton's going to continue playing with Theodore, which I have a feeling after today's game, he is not. I would guess Coughlin's back in the lineup in the next game based on Hutton's couple of mistakes today. Again, I'm not 100% sure that was Hutton's issue, but I know the one up the glass that led to the delayed penalty and then the goal on that one, that's certainly Hutton's issue, not keeping that puck in. You're going to go for it. You got to keep it in. It's disappointing that that's what happened there. We'll see. What's this one? Any update on Martinez, Patrick, and Howden? So I'll go in the backwards order from what you have. Howden, we got an update a couple of days ago. Basically, I don't know what the injury is. I don't know when the injury happened, but there is an injury there. This is not just constant healthy scratches. He has not been in practice for a number of days here with the team. He has been skating with the coaches recently, so that's good. I do think he will be back in the fold fairly soon. He is supposed to travel with the team on this trip. Patrick has been skating for about 5 practices or so. I didn't go this morning. There wasn't supposed to be a skate, so I didn't go this morning, but I don't know if or who skated this morning. I would imagine that if there was a skate, he would have been out there again. He's been skating in the no contact jersey the entire time. So where we are on that, I would assume we're pretty close with the number of times he's skated. The question is, where does he fit into this lineup and who is he pushing out of the lineup? Because at the moment, Amadio is starting to play a lot better. And so I'm not sure Patrick belongs in the lineup at this moment. We'll see where that goes. As far as Martinez, I asked 2 days ago on that one. And the answer was very cryptic, something along the lines of he's not going backwards, but he's progressing very slowly. I don't particularly know what that means, so I don't know. I will stand by what I've been saying to a number of different people, whether it's been on the radio or on Twitter or in-person conversations. I do not think that one is a season-long injury. I don't think that's going to be LTIR all the way to the end of April and into May. Like, just doesn't make sense to me. So, thanks, Kat, for saying they did not practice today. So I would imagine he'll be back at some point. I don't know what's going on, if it's more cut or more whatever. The last update we had really gotten was that they got the information on the cut, and they said there was no structural damage on his face. And then later, they were kind of taught, and by they, I mean DeBoer, was kind of mentioning something along the lines of a head injury, which he doesn't like to use the word concussion. I don't particularly know why. My read on it was that it was a concussion, and that it was concussion-like symptoms that are keeping him out. I would assume that having a giant cut on your face also adds to that, does not make you feel all that good. So I think it's still head-related injury as opposed to cut-related injury, but I don't have that information completely at this point. As far as the upcoming games, I think the key for me is not going to be what the actual results are. I want to see fewer goals allowed. I think that if this team's going to make it to the Stanley Cup final, Eichel in the lineup or not, or whatever it looks like, I don't think it makes a difference what this roster looks like, whether Eichel or who goes out or whatever. I think that this has to be a team that is top 10 in the league in goals against. I just don't think that they can play a style that's going to be able to play with this many chances and this many goals against. I think if they're giving up 3 consistently in the postseason, they're probably going to get bounced. And that's especially if you consider, if you play this style that they're giving up these chances against the teams like Colorado, Edmonton, Carolina, Florida, these elite teams, I don't think you're going to be able to get it done. But to answer TJ's question, is this a Stanley Cup contending team? My answer is a resounding yes. I think that whether Eichel comes in and has a huge impact or not, as long as the change isn't massive, and we'll see what it looks like, but either way, you're going to be playing without a couple of players. How Eichel fits into this system is going to be important, because if he's not fitting into the system immediately, it's going to be awfully difficult to have that fit immediately when he gets to a postseason. However, if they're playing at the level that they can, specifically defensively, and if they become a top 10 defensive team in regards to goals allowed, and I would more say maybe it's chances allowed or high danger chances allowed, which has been a disaster this season. If that number trends in the right direction, even if they're not getting the good goaltending and whatever, even if the number of goals go in isn't where it needs to be, if the underlying stats start pointing back in the right direction, expected goals, high danger chances, rush chances, these types of things, if these go in the right direction, this is a Stanley Cup team. I think they can be the best team in the NHL. I do think that the path is going to be awfully tricky, and they're still going to have to find a way to deal with that style of play where a team just packs it in front of their goalie, waits for them to make that mistake. They're going to have to figure out, how do we generate offense without turning the puck over in our own zone? Hopefully, that is something that Eichel will help, that he can generate offense. He can break down that 5-man unit and allow for that those defensemen to activate into the play, get Pietrangelo making plays, help them score when they have not been able to score in the past. But my concern lies in, right now, even with the healthy unit, they're still allowing way too many opportunities against. I think the penalty kill will be fine. I don't think it's going to be quite the elite unit that it used to be, and I think that's because the West Division was shit, and you're not playing the shit West Division anymore. I also think they're going to try to stay committed to using other players on their penalty kill, which may decrease your penalty kill a little bit, but should increase your 5-on-5 a little bit come the most important time of the season. So in that regard, I'll take that trade-off. That doesn't bother me that much. The power play is a massive concern. It has to improve. I don't think Eichel is going to just come in and change their power play immediately because I think the system is broken. Today, we saw some pieces of the system that maybe it can work. Start to see some of the things that they've done in practice that have worked, and they were able to put that into a game against a team that knows them very well. That's a good sign that we're headed in the right direction there. But the entry problems, there's still an issue of it basically has to come through Pacioretty. Today's one of them didn't. The other one did. We'll see how that goes. But the overwhelming feel I have for this team is if they can improve defensively, and we know they can based on the last 2 seasons, if they can get back to that, they can absolutely be the best team in the Western Conference. And then it comes down to who is it in the East? What type of matchup does it look like? I think that's going to be tough no matter what. I think Colorado or Carolina is really good. Florida's really good. I still think Tampa's very good. You know, there are some issues over there that these teams are going to be a problem. I think New York could potentially be a problem. The Rangers, not the Islanders. So we'll see. But again, in these 4 games, you're playing some Eastern Conference opponents. You're playing some teams you haven't seen in a while, haven't seen you in a little while, barely have seen the DeBoer-led Golden Knights, which is weird to say because he's been here forever. But this is an opportunity to go on the road and play defensive hockey. I think you want to focus on let's allow 1 or 2 every single night as opposed to 3 or 4. If they can go through this in the 8 games or in the 4 games and allow 8 or 9 goals, that's what you're looking for. If it can be 10 or less, even 10, I wouldn't be all that upset with. But I'd like it to be less than 9. Even if that means 2-1 here, 1-0 here, and then they win the other 2 and they walk out of there with 4 points. I don't really care that much about the points. You got to get some, but I think they'll be okay in that regard. I do think the defense has to pick up. The number of chances that they're allowing have to pick up. That will allow Leonard to start getting back to feeling much better about his game. I think you'll see less of these goofy mistakes that we've seen in the recent past. You won't have to have the talk all about the goalies, and I tried to stay off of it in this one as much as possible because I think it's clear he's not playing as well as he can. He can play better than this. He has played better than this season. I think we'll get more out of him moving forward. But it comes down to the defense. And these are 4 teams that play different styles of game. There's teams in there that don't generate a lot of offense. There's teams in there that do. There's teams that have high skill but aren't particularly all that locked up defensively. How are you going to deal with that team? There's a team like Boston that's given you problems in the past with the way that they play. I want to see defensive hockey win out over the next 4 games. It doesn't even mean they have to win the games. I just want to see less chances, less goals against, more so the first one. Just start getting back to shot suppression equals them not scoring goals. That's what it needs to be because the shot suppression we know doesn't always generate a ton of offense for the Golden Knights. Some nights it does. Often in the regular season it generates a kind of more than we're used to after watching postseason hockey, but more so the way that this team is going to win the Stanley Cup is by defending. They have to be awesome defensively. It needs to start at some point. And as much as I'm sitting here and I'm usually the one waving the flag of saying, wait a minute, you've got 50 games left. It's not that big a deal. But I actually think it needs to be in place and operating well for weeks on end prior to Eichel. So that when there are the issues when Eichel comes in, and there will be changes when Eichel comes in, you can rely on some of the things you've been doing on the past and kind of fold him in to the good things as opposed to you still trying to find your games. I think these 4 games are important to taking another step in the right direction. They've gotten back to having the puck. They've gotten back to generating offense consistently. Now it's the other side of the ice that I want to see a lot better. Again, thank you to Conlon Associates CPAs for sponsoring this Periscope. Shout out to them. They are big Golden Knights fans. fans. I'm sure Gary was going nuts on this game. And basically this whole homestand, it's been a wild homestand, a lot of fun, not just because I said the word wild. And of course, huge shout out to my boy, Brashad Perriman. What a stud. What a superstar. Love you, Brashad Perriman. I love you, Tom Brady. I love everyone who plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I still can't believe they're not shit. It's amazing. But back to the Golden Knights. Let's get some W's on the road. Let's start looking like the dominant team, and let's start putting, this is a good opportunity to go on the road to East Coast teams and look at these national writers and say, look, this team's still legit. This is still one of the best teams in the NHL, and whatever has to happen when Eichel comes in, it's not going to change this team that much. They're still going to be dominant, but you got to put that performance in more consistently, and they just haven't been all that consistent. There's reasons to doubt him at this point. I'd like to start to see some of that doubt end. Good night, Chen Kui.